Beneath the towering peaks of skyscrapers, deep below the taxis in Times Square, lies one of the most complex and curiously evolved ecosystems on Earth. This is the New York subway, where survival is never guaranteed. Join us as we journey into the beating heart of the city that never sleeps. As desensitized to the subway as any New Yorker becomes, they must admit, the daily commute is something of an Animal Planet-style fight for life. Under the bustling streets of the Big Apple, rats scuttle about pools of toxic sludge, goo seeps from the crumbling walls, and needles litter the tracks. To descend into this living hell in the first place, you must gingerly step over unfortunate souls strewn like corpses across the stairs, only to be serenaded by the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. A full mariachi band. If you have the misfortune of being alive in the subway, it's only in spite of the transport system's best efforts. I'd once barely escaped death when a massive chunk of the ceiling came thundering down behind me, landing just behind me. A warning shot, I assume. The everyday struggle for survival can't always be won, so I can't say I was too surprised when I came face to face with a real-life ghost on the F train. Ding! The second the train car doors opened, I was met with a gust of wind. A ghastly glow emanated from where he sat, competing with the dinginess of the fluorescent lights. A clearing of empty seats stretched before him like a moat, which meant other people saw him too. The only thing worse than not finding a seat on the subway is finding a seat on the subway. This can only mean one thing, that something terrible happened there. He looked just like the ghosts in the movies. And by movies, I don't mean the new ones with high-quality special effects, spectral apparitions that leap off the screen. No, I mean classics, like the Charlie Brown Halloween special. That's right. The F-train ghost was cloaked in a white bedsheet, perforated by 2 gaping eye holes. The linen pulsated up and down as the ghost pleasured himself. It was a classic New York game of chicken. The risks of being haunted by a wanking specter were one thing, but the threat to my street cred if I folded now and changed seats was another. I had to ask myself a question we all must ask ourselves at one point or another. Was I in the splash zone? This was only the first in a long line of schlongs I would come to see on the mean streets of this cold, cold world. But the ones to come were much different. They could not plead an insanity defense. More than a few, however, could boast an impressive collection of trench coats. The trench coat, originally developed by Burberry as a garment for the British Army, to be worn only by officers and warrant officers Class 1. An esteemed garment, they have been worn by respected figures of popular culture, such as Sherlock Holmes, the Joker, and that guy from The Matrix. But oh, how the mighty trench coat has fallen. While they were once designed for the trenches of war, the coats have now solidly taken up their place in the trenches of the human soul. My first trench coat encounter took place in the scenic environs of Manhattan's West Village. One evening, as I turned the corner of Barrow Street, I sensed a commotion emanating from the recessed stairwell of the entrance to a basement apartment. Today was trash day, so I was not alarmed. Prepared to encounter your standard garbage bag throbbing with rats, a moving reminder of the circle of life. But what I was to behold, while certainly a reminder of the circle of life, was far more than a sack of rats. A man vigorously massaging a fleshy protrusion between the elegant folds of his trench coat. Camouflaged in the twilight shadows, the male of the species eyes his target. Like his close cousin, the vulture, his natural habitat is one of ominous decay. I felt intimately involved in this outdoor rendezvous. Willing or not, I had been thrust into this affair, my unsuspecting gaze the sole unwilling partner in this fucked up fantasy. On the one hand, I was amused, like a little kid chuckling at a dirty joke. I was deliciously scandalized. Wasn't this what people moved to the big city for? The Big Apple, the capital of the world. Who knew what was lurking behind each corner? Dollar pizza, the naked cowboy, showtime. The possibilities were endless. Some small part of me felt a little bit violated, too. No one had asked me if I wanted to participate in this fresh air fetish in the first place. As these instances became more and more frequent, the sheen of amusement chipped away. There were a few more trench coats, true to form, as well as a mobile masturbator on the bus, another in the doorway of my apartment, then the pair teetering doggy style out of the 20th story window. The list goes on. The first time or two, it seemed cathartic almost. The way the winkers seemed to unbutton the restrictions imposed by society and fling all cares to the wind for a one-off spree, an exception to the normal day-to-day and its stale expectations. After all, who doesn't yearn to feel a delicate spring breeze against their... to be restored for one brief moment to humanity's original state, to return once more to the Garden of Eden before the fall. But as these experiences accumulated, they began to feel less and less like a one-time spontaneous jubilee and more calculated. They all had one thing in common. The act of exposing in a public or semi-public context one's intimate parts is the definition of exhibitionism. If this causes significant problems in the exhibitionist's life, it qualifies for a diagnosis of exhibitionistic disorder. According to a research study by the Clark Institute of Psychiatry, when a sample of 185 exhibitionists were asked, how would you have preferred a person to react if you were to expose your privates to him or her? The leading response, clocking in at 35%, was, would want to have sexual intercourse, followed by, to show their privates also, at 15%. Doing a bit of investigation into the topic, you'll find that any psychological manual's treatment of the phenomenon notes that exhibitionism is far more common in men than women, but does not delve any further into the matter. While masturbation is typically thought of as a solo affair, it became clear that my presence played a key role in their pleasure. I began to feel like I'd been unwillingly cast as the lead in a Truman Show-style porno without having to so much as take my clothes off. They took an act, a state of exposure that would be embarrassing to most, and somehow turned it on to me, refracting their humiliation onto me by their very lack of shame. But beyond this, it was as if they were staking out territory in a way. Often, they stationed themselves around the perimeter of whatever space we inhabited, the beach, the train, the entrance to the bus, their surveillant gaze delineating the boundaries. It was one particular afternoon at the beach that laid bare the systemic nature underlying these acts, the way they structured space as more of a rule than an exception. The day was perfect postcard material. Ivory sand dissolved like sugar into the electric aquamarine ocean. White clouds hung fat and ripe over the horizon as my friends and I, 19 at the time, lay gold-drenched in the afternoon sun. A few beachgoers lurked in the periphery of our vision, dotting the rocks behind us, but nothing that sounded any particular alarms. That is, until the soft lull of the waves was shot through by my friend's piercing screech. My head snapped up, and the scene that came into focus could have been a National Geographic special. As the sun casts its golden glow across the coastline, the beach teems with life. But beneath this tranquil surface, something darker stirs. The males of the species have gathered in a shirtless pack, lurking at the fringes of the social order, perched on the rocks. The air shifts. Unblinking, the males zero in on their female prey, and then the ritual begins. Bolstered by the reinforcement of the herd, they collectively extract their penises, strenuously stroking them in a display of dominance. Now this raises a number of questions. First, were they pals? Did they work together, get drinks together? Or did they just get together on the weekends to jack off to teenage girls on the beach? Second, what did the planning process look like? Did they send invitations? A doodle poll to coordinate the time that worked best for them all? Third, would they have preferred to go it alone, but the beach was just so overcrowded with guys doing the same? Or did they purposefully prefer the camaraderie of the age-old circle jerk? While pleasure may have played a role, the long and short of it is power. Perched around me at the beach or lying in wait on street corners and subway cars, these men had constructed a regime of looking that permeated public space. A penile panopticon, if you will. Their gaze flattened me into a prop, ensuring that even if they didn't physically grasp me, they'd force me into their fantasies one way or another. Not to mention the hint of implied violence. If these guys were willing to whip it out on a summer day like this without even a drop of sunscreen, what other limits were they willing to transgress? They took more than their fair share of the right to look. But what happened when I turned the gaze back on them? It was an experiment I finally got to put to the test when walking along the coast one afternoon, camera in hand, ready to document the flora and fauna. And flora and fauna I found. As I neared the bushes, I glimpsed him. That familiar weight of the gaze, the sneaky pulsations, the smack of sun against flesh. As the harsh midday sun heats the shores of the coastline, we witness once more the solitary ritual of the human male. Camouflaged in the brush, he lies in wait, breath abated as the female of the species approaches. Stealthy, the male crouches out of sight, the only movement the steady stroke of his own genitalia, causing a ripple in the otherwise breezeless vegetation. From the thicket, he had been watching me approach for at least 15 minutes. But this time, I had my camera. This time, I looked back. I stormed him like a wild hog charging at its prey, finger glued to the shutter button. Squealing, he snatched his clothes and scurried away, his scrawny ass glinting amidst the brambles, setting what must be a new record for the naked 100-meter dash. While only one of these men came properly dressed as a ghost. The truth is, it goes beyond an antagonistic arms race of predator and prey. It's more than that. A haunting that penetrates all spaces, a seething presence that meddles in the flow of the day-to-day. But ghosts only have their power as long as you can't quite grasp them. Floating just outside the realm of the living, they are all seeing. That is, until you dare to look back.
Fuck yeah, Katerina V!